Electric car makers have become the Chinese government's newest target in what's becoming a sweeping crackdown on the nation's most innovative sectors. Officials say there are too many companies competing for raw materials, talent and manufacturing capacity. Beijing says instead of trying to beat each other, companies need to focus on taking on rivals from overseas. Paolo Montecillo reports.
Go big or go home. Those are China's marching orders for its electric car makers. The industry is struggling with a chip shortage, and Beijing says it's interested in only letting the best survive.
Combining them or bringing them together could certainly resolve some of those supply chain issues and perhaps could also produce a bit more efficiency as well in terms of a price.
China is the world's biggest electric car producer, but it also has more than 300 firms vying for market share. Officials are encouraging them to merge into larger ones. They're also setting tougher rules for the approval of new projects. It's the latest set of more interventionist policies that have affected sectors like e-commerce, gaming, and real estate. One of the government's most high-profile targets is the Ant Financial Group, owned by billionaire Jack Ma. Beijing has reportedly ordered its online payments unit Alipay to break up its lending businesses and hand over user data. Its plans for the auto sector comes as competition grows from Europe and the US, which are just as eager to dominate the $162 billion industry.
As I've said before, we're in competition with China and many other nations for the 21st century. To win, we're going to have to make sure the future will be made in America.
Growth in China's electric vehicle market has been fueled by government investment. Over the past 5 years, it spent $5 billion on subsidies for the industry. The government's also ramping up its support with the construction of charging stations nationwide.
They gambled it probably more than a decade ago on electrification, allowing them to really prize the market open.
Electric car sales are expected to reach $2.4 trillion by 2027. Beijing is betting a more focused approach will give its car makers the boost to dominate at home and abroad. Paolo Montecillo, TRT World.
Well, for more on this, Vasuki Sastry joins us now from Dubai. He's an Associate Fellow of Chatham House's Asia Pacific Programme. Great to have you back with us, Vasuki. Can I start by asking you about these reports surrounding Alipay? Alipay is by far China's biggest financial app. It has more than 1 billion users, and now authorities reportedly want it broken up. Can you tell us more about the business and why Beijing might be looking to dismantle it?
Yeah, I think what we are seeing in Alipay over the past 7 months or so is a very slow strangulation of the company and a very slow strangulation also of the private sector in China. So if you look at Alipay itself, what the government seems to be doing, particularly since Ant Financial's IPO was suspended late last year, was to separate out Ant Financial's core payments business. The payments business is very much a commoditized business, very low margins, from the more high-profile, high-value lending business that Ant Financial essentially was posing a fundamental threat to the Chinese state-owned banks, which traditionally dominated finance. So, if we believe the reports that we are seeing, certainly the government has taken a decision that Ant Financial should separate out its consumer lending operations. What we've seen today is a suggestion that the credit scoring mechanism, now this is an algorithm which is obviously proprietary to Alibaba and Ant Financial, that credit scoring system is going to be placed into a joint venture with a couple of state-owned partners. Now, this is an illustration. This is almost like the US federal government requiring Google to place its search algorithm into a joint venture partly owned by the government. So, this is a seismic development.
It sure is, and this would be the latest in a broader crackdown on the private sector in China. We've seen authorities looking to rein in the power of big tech firms, private education firms and others. What are they hoping to achieve exactly?
there's a clear political goal here. So if you look back 20 years, certainly from between 2000 and 2020, this is the time when the private sector, the domestic private sector in China, was allowed to flourish. There were very few regulations. Indeed, they were all encouraged to assume the commanding heights of the economy. And you began to see the rise of Alibaba, of Tencent, and many, many other companies under the benign governance of the state. So what seems to have happened, certainly towards the, at least what we've seen in the last 18 months, is President Xi Jinping's desire to exercise greater control over the private sector. One can speculate that this possibly is because the Chinese authorities feel that these big tech firms have become too powerful, both in terms of market capitalization, in terms of the influence that they can wield within China. So they need to be, in a way, checked at the gate. This is, similar to what happened in Russia many, many years ago, when President Putin moved to control the influence of the oligarchs. So what seems to be happening is both control over the private sector with an explicit emphasis of wealth redistribution. So, you've seen the slogan called common prosperity make the rounds in China over the last 6 months, which essentially means it curtails wealth accumulation to make sure that everyone gets a fair share.
Okay, Vasuki Sastry from Chatham House. We'll have to leave it there, but it was really good to get your analysis. Thanks so much for that.